the warrior deities, gods of justice, vengeance, and protection. Imagine a world where the clashing of swords is not just an act of war, but a sacred ritual, where thunder isn't merely weather, but the roar of divine justice, where fire doesn't just destroy, it purifies, punishes, and proclaims the will of the gods. In ancient Africa, war was not a chaotic scramble for power. It was order, it was balance, it was a message from the heavens delivered through warriors who bore not only weapons, but sacred duty. In this world, justice burned, vengeance was righteous, and the battlefield was a holy place. But what unites a lightning-wielding Yoruba king who once ruled as a man before ascending to divine status? A lion-headed war god who stood at the side of Nubian pharaohs, and a fire spirit whose wrath cleansed spiritual corruption across East Africa. What deeper thread weaves their stories together across time, geography, and culture? Why did so many African civilizations entrust their survival, their victories, and even their sense of cosmic right and wrong to these powerful warrior deities? These are not just tales. They are blueprints of belief, of morality fused with power, of gods who wielded more than might. They wielded purpose. In today's journey, we plunge into the mythic legacies of three extraordinary warrior gods: Shango of the Yoruba, the thunderous Orisha whose rage lights up the sky and whose justice cracks the earth beneath your feet; Apedemak of ancient Nubia, the fierce lion-headed protector of kings and civilization, whose sword carved boundaries and whose presence sanctified war; and Mahuika, the elusive and often overlooked fire deity, whose burning spirit scorched lies, ignited justice, and brought balance to East Africa's spiritual cosmos. This episode is more than mythology. It's a portal into the spiritual heart of African warfare, where battle was never just bloodshed, but divine communication. These gods were not mere symbols. They were living forces, guardians of order, and agents of sacred retribution. Justice didn't always arrive in silence. It boomed with thunder, flared with fire, and marched in lion skin. Through them, we uncover how ancient cultures found meaning, morality, and spiritual alignment in the chaos of conflict. You're about to witness how the sacred and the savage blend in the stories of deities who didn't just fight wars, they judged them. Shango, the wrath and rhythm of justice. Shango was not born a god. He was once a man, an ambitious and powerful king of the ancient Oyo Empire. But his presence was larger than life, and his legacy would thunder beyond the grave. As the fourth Alafin of Oyo, Shango's reign was marked by both splendor and storm. He was a fierce warrior, a charismatic ruler, and a master of sorcery. But it wasn't just his mortal deeds that earned him a place among the divine. It was the way he ruled, with lightning in his heart and justice in his hands. Shango is the Orisha of thunder and lightning, a divine figure in Yoruba cosmology who embodies virility, power, and sacred retribution. His voice is the thunderclap. His weapon is the double-headed axe, symbolizing his ability to strike both ways, to command respect and to punish disobedience. Shango is not a passive god. He is a god of decisive action, of bold declarations, of consequences that cannot be ignored. His presence announces itself in storms. His anger ignites the sky, and when he speaks, the earth listens. To invoke Shango is to summon judgment. He is not a deity of gentle nudges or soft-spoken wisdom. He is the final word, the hammer of heaven. In Yoruba belief, when justice fails in the human realm, it is Shango who answers. When corruption hides behind power, Shango reveals it. When evil escapes human hands, he burns it with fire and sky. He is the patron of truth, and he does not tolerate lies. Shango's connection to justice is more than myth. In ancient Oyo, kings were seen as divine agents of order, and Shango's transformation into a god after his death was not just reverence, it was recognition. His people saw in him a ruler who brought balance through force, who ruled not through fear alone, but through an unwavering devotion to fairness and divine principle. Even his flaws, his temper, his pride, his thirst for dominance, were reframed as divine necessities, traits befitting a god who must wield wrath for the greater good. And then there is rhythm. Shango is the master of bata drums, the pulse of ritual, the sound of divine justice rolling through the villages. Music is not entertainment to Shango, it is invocation, command, presence. When the drums beat, the air thickens. Dancers twist like lightning in human form. Through rhythm, Shango descends. Through fire and movement, he speaks. The power of music becomes the power of judgment. In diaspora communities from Cuba to Brazil, Shango traveled with the enslaved, becoming a symbol of resistance, a god of righteous rebellion. In Candomblé and Santeria, he still roars, adorned in red and white, his axe raised high, reminding the oppressed that justice has a voice, and sometimes that voice must shout. To understand Shango is to understand a god who does not hesitate, a god who acts when others falter, a god whose justice is not symbolic, it's elemental. Thunder is not a metaphor, it's a warning, it's a promise. Shango's mythology is as electric as the storms he commands. One of the most famous tales recounts how he accidentally summoned lightning to strike his own palace, leading to the death of many. Overcome with grief and responsibility, he vanished into the forest and took his own life, or so the legend goes. But death did not end his story. His followers, mourning their powerful king, claimed he ascended to the heavens, taking his rightful place among the Orishas. This narrative cemented Shango not just as a figure of fear, but one of reverence. His fall and rise became a moral and spiritual parable. Another widely revered tale tells of Shango's legendary battle with Ogun, the Orisha of iron and war. In their clash, the skies exploded with thunder and the earth trembled under Ogun's hammer. Though both were powerful, it was Shango's command of storm and voice that prevailed. This battle wasn't just a contest of strength, it was a metaphor for the primacy of law over brute force, of divine order over chaotic violence. Shango's justice wasn't random, it had rhythm, purpose, a sacred beat. He is also deeply associated with fire, which he wields as a tool of transformation. Fire in Shango's mythos is not merely destruction, it is purification. It burns away corruption, fear, and spiritual darkness. To call on Shango is to ask for renewal through trial. His rituals often involve fire in bowls or sacred torches, symbolic of his presence consuming falsehoods and illuminating truth. Shango's colors, red and white, are not arbitrary. Red represents his fire and passion, while white symbolizes clarity and spiritual integrity. His devotees often wear these colors during ceremonies, invoking his guidance and strength. The dance of his worship is vigorous, forceful, mimicking his thunderous energy. Each stomp on the ground is said to echo his footsteps from the sky. Temples dedicated to Shango, both ancient and modern, feature drums at their heart. These drums are not ornamental, they are communication tools. It is said that the bata drum can speak the language of the Orishas, and Shango, being a master drummer, hears and responds through these rhythms. The intensity of a Shango ritual can transform an ordinary moment into a divine encounter. Shango is also invoked in justice rituals, where oaths are taken in his name and disputes are settled by invoking his divine oversight. In some traditions, if a person swears falsely on Shango, they are believed to be marked for punishment, sometimes by mysterious illness, accidents, or even lightning. The fear and respect he commands ensure that invoking his name is never done lightly. The legacy of Shango extends far beyond Yoruba land. During the transatlantic slave trade, Yoruba people carried his stories and worship into the Americas. In Trinidad and Tobago, Brazil, Cuba, and Haiti, Shango's identity evolved yet remained deeply intact. In Trinidad, Shango is the centerpiece of an entire religious movement known as the Shango Baptist Church, which blends Christian and Yoruba beliefs into a vibrant spiritual tradition. In Brazil's Candomblé, he is known as Shango and is one of the most widely revered orixás. His worship there includes complex rituals, grand festivals, and oracular consultations. Shango is seen as the embodiment of masculine energy, justice, and righteous anger. His followers believe he resides in the stone and in the storm, always watching, always ready to strike down those who abuse power. In Cuba's Santeria tradition, Shango is invoked not only for justice, but for courage, vitality, and personal power. He is the ideal of the spiritual warrior, the divine king who teaches that strength must serve justice. His followers honor him with offerings of ram, red apples, and amala, a thick porridge made of yam and oil. These acts are not just cultural, they are declarations of faith in justice beyond the human realm. What makes Shango enduring is not just his might, but his moral clarity. He does not protect blindly. He tests, he judges, and he acts with precision. In a world full of ambiguous power, Shango stands firm as a symbol that divine authority must serve divine truth. His myth offers a blueprint for leadership. A good ruler, according to Shango's legacy, must be powerful yet accountable, passionate yet just, feared yet loved. The double-headed axe he carries isn't just a weapon, it's a reminder that all actions carry consequences in both directions. Leaders who forget that, who wield power without conscience, will eventually face his thunder. To call Shango a warrior god is accurate, but limiting. He is a judge, a priest, a king, and a cosmic enforcer. His domain is not only the battlefield, but the courtroom of heaven. Every lightning strike is a verdict, every storm a trial. In Shango, we find the meeting point between human law and divine decree. When we hear the thunder roll across the sky, we are not just hearing nature, we are hearing history, myth, and divine memory echo through the clouds. That is Shango's voice, reminding us that justice is alive, that truth, no matter how deeply buried, will be unearthed, that power, if unchecked, will be challenged. Shango does not ask for silence. He demands we speak the truth. And if we do not, he will. Apedemak, Lion of Nubia, god of kings and conquest. Far south of Egypt's golden pyramids and along the rich floodplains of the Nile, in the ancient kingdom of Nubia, a lion-headed god stood as the protector of pharaohs and the living embodiment of sacred kingship. Apedemak. This fearsome warrior deity roared not only in battle, but in the very essence of governance. Where others saw war as a brute force of domination, Apedemak brought structure, ceremony, and the divine affirmation of conquest. He was not just a god of war, he was war as cosmic duty, justice with a roar, power with moral purpose. The Kushites, who ruled much of Nubia from cities like Napata and Meroe, revered Apedemak as a divine general, the supreme symbol of royal authority and a spiritual guardian of the state. Unlike the gods of Egypt, who often presided over the skies or the underworld, Apedemak was very much a god of the living. His presence was inscribed in the granite of temple walls and the rituals of coronations. He was drawn with the body of a man and the fierce head of a lion, eyes blazing, sometimes wielding swords or spears, always commanding awe. His temples were not only places of worship, They were centers of power, military planning, and spiritual clarity. One of the most striking aspects of Apedemak is his depiction in Meroitic iconography. In the Temple of Musawaratis Sufra, he is shown as a three-headed lion or a lion-headed man, seated on a throne or riding elephants, symbols not only of strength but of dominion over chaos. His multiple heads were not grotesque but divine, indicating omniscience, omnipresence, and the ability to see through falsehoods and betrayals. To face Apedemak was to be judged by a force that saw everything and missed nothing. Apedemak was also deeply connected to kingship. Each new ruler of Kush was believed to receive divine blessing from Apedemak. His approval was symbolized in the temple rituals and sacred texts. Rulers stood before his statues and offered sacrifices, not merely for victory in battle, but for wisdom in rule. The king was not merely a political leader, he was Apedemak's chosen vessel, his human extension. In times of political strife, appeals were made to Apedemak not only to destroy enemies but to restore order and reinforce legitimacy. The lion was no accident. In African symbolism, the lion represents courage, strength, and sovereign authority. But Apedemak's lion visage was more than metaphor. It was transformation. He was the beast and the divine mind combined, fury guided by intellect, destruction bounded by moral law. His warfare was not reckless but orchestrated, aimed at restoring balance when human ambition grew chaotic. Unlike gods who ruled from afar, Apedemak was near, immanent, invoked in everyday governance and conflict. His worship was practical, ritualistic, but also deeply philosophical. In battle, warriors called his name not only for protection, but for spiritual validation. His favor was not easily won. It required purity of purpose and loyalty to divine justice. He was not a patron of conquest for conquest's sake. His wrath descended on the unjust, even if they wore crowns. In times of peace, Apedemak remained vigilant. His influence extended into diplomacy and law. Temples often featured dual shrines, one for Amun, the hidden god of creation, and one for Apedemak, the visible god of action. This spiritual duality reflected Nubia's political vision, contemplation balanced with execution, mercy with might. Apedemak was the necessary edge of divine will, the sword that executed cosmic law. Perhaps most fascinating is Apedemak's divergence from traditional Egyptian war deities. Whereas Egyptian gods like Set embodied chaos, Apedemak was the annihilator of it. He did not represent destruction for its own sake. His fury was selective, his battles strategic. In a world of shifting alliances and political upheaval, he offered something rare, clarity. For his worshippers, he was a beacon of integrity in the fog of war. Apedemak was not worshipped with fear, but with fierce devotion. His ceremonies often included lion dances, battle reenactments, and the sacrifice of animals symbolizing the enemies of truth and justice. Sacred texts and inscriptions describe him as the Lord of Arrows, the roarer in battle, and protector of the southern lands. These were not just titles, they were oaths. Every warrior of Kush swore under the eyes of Apedemak that their blade would defend justice, their hand would serve righteousness. The people of Nubia saw him not only as a god, but as a cornerstone of their national identity. When Apedemak stood with the king, that king's rule was unshakable. When he withdrew his favor, thrones crumbled. His presence could be felt in war councils, his name whispered in strategy debates. Even the architects of temples invoked his protection to shield cities from invasion and divine wrath. To build under Apedemak's gaze was to build with purpose, to lay stone upon stone in the name of something eternal. His temples, like the great lion sanctuary of Naka, were carved with images of victory and divine rulership. Columns bore his symbols, murals painted with scenes of lion-headed deities riding across fields of fallen enemies. Yet amidst the blood and steel, there was always a message: justice. Apedemak's war was never without cause. His vengeance was never baseless. When he struck, it was to heal, to purge, to restore. Through Apedemak, the Nubians built a spiritual understanding of kingship that transcended fear. Their warrior god was not merely a punisher, he was a restorer, a guardian, a standard. In Apedemak, the spear was sacred, the roar was holy, and every campaign carried the weight of cosmic truth. His was the justice of the lion, silent until provoked, swift when awakened. And though the empire that revered him has long since faded into sand and time, Apedemak's echo still roars through history. He reminds us that war, when fused with ethics and divinity, is not destruction but recreation, that in the clash of shields and the cry of warriors, there can live a prayer, a purpose, and a promise. Mahuika and the sacred fire of vengeance. In the deep cradle of East Africa's mythic memory, among ancient tales passed down in flickering flame and whispered smoke, dwells a figure both feared and revered. Mahuika, the spirit of fire. Often portrayed as a goddess, sometimes a god, and occasionally both, Mahuika defies rigid categories. Mahuika is not just fire personified. They are the soul of fire itself, the ancestral flame that judges, punishes, and protects. Their fire is not a tool of man, but a force of divine will, burning away lies, cleansing transgressions, and igniting the very essence of cosmic justice. Mahuika's presence is elemental. Fire was sacred in many East African cultures, not merely for warmth or cooking, but as a spiritual mediator. To light a flame was to open a line to the divine, and in that flame, Mahuika lived. As the guardian of this spiritual fire, Mahuika was called upon in times of great trial, when vengeance had to be exacted, when justice had to be seared into the bones of the guilty, when healing demanded purging first. They were not a god to be taken lightly. Mahuika did not grant warmth without first demanding respect. The stories of Mahuika often begin in darkness. In one tale, Mahuika held all the fire in the world within their fingertips, each finger a flame, each flame a divine gift. When a trickster tried to steal the fire for humanity, Mahuika responded not with mercy but with fury. One by one they released their fingers as burning stars scorching the earth, cleansing it of deception. Even as the trickster escaped with a spark, Mahuika's lesson was clear. Fire may serve mankind, but it never belongs to them. This fire is not mere destruction, it is transformation. Mahuika's vengeance was never cruel without cause. It was exacting, precise, divine. When called in ritual, Mahuika's flame circled the sacred ground, tracing a barrier between worlds, the seen and the unseen, the sacred and the profane. Those who entered the ring of fire lied at their peril. In such ceremonies, Mahuika's fire was judge, jury, and executioner. If one was innocent, the flame protected. If guilty, it consumed. East African warrior societies revered Mahuika not as a distant deity, but as an ever-watchful spirit. Warriors bathed in flame before battle, passing through smoke-filled chambers, offering chants to Mahuika to purge cowardice and false intentions. The fire was more than a symbol, it was a test. Those who hesitated in its heat were deemed unready. Those who embraced it bore Mahuika's mark. Fearless, focused, and loyal to justice above all. The fire god also served as a protector of women and children. In times of crisis, when villages were under threat, Mahuika was summoned through fire altars. These altars were never placed randomly. They were built at the village heart, carved from sacred wood, arranged in geometric forms that mirrored constellations believed to be Mahuika's celestial home. Women would dance around these fires, invoking not destruction, but fierce protection. The flames danced back, crackling with life, promising vengeance upon any who dared breach their safety. But Mahuika's vengeance was not blind. Their fire spared the repentant, purged the arrogant, and burned away deception to reveal truth. In tribal courts, before elders delivered judgment, they would sometimes toss a small object into the flame, hair, bark, feathers, and watch it burn. If it smoldered slowly, the accused was likely truthful. If it flared violently, Mahuika was displeased. This was not superstition, it was sacred reading. The fire never lied. Mahuika never whispered, they only roared. Unlike Shango's thunder or Apedemak's lion roar, Mahuika's wrath crept in silence. The kindling of slow fire, the rising of smoke, the moment when the air itself turned to warning. That was Mahuika's way. Their vengeance did not come in chaos, but in inevitability. Mahuika's fire could burn for days, unchallenged, not to destroy crops or homes, but to cleanse a land of spiritual decay. Fields touched by this fire were later seen as fertile, blessed by the divine heat that drove out the darkness. In some traditions, Mahuika was believed to live in the volcanoes that dotted the East African rift. These mountains were not merely geological giants, they were breathing temples. People made pilgrimages to these fiery peaks, carrying small torches lit from village altars. They would leave offerings at volcanic craters, obsidian shards, dried herbs, animal bones, gifts meant to appease the fire god, to ensure the lava stayed below, the rage contained. Yet Mahuika was not always alone. In many stories, Mahuika worked alongside other deities, spirits of water, wind, and earth. Together they formed the elemental council, balancing each other. But when the balance tipped, when a tribe betrayed oaths, when justice was twisted, Mahuika acted alone. The fire would rise, the wind would still, the earth would tremble in quiet respect, and the guilty would learn that even in silence, fire can scream. Across generations, Mahuika's myth has endured not because of spectacle, but because of meaning. Fire is everywhere, on our stoves, in our rituals, in the heat of our passions, and the flare of our angers. Mahuika is not a god of the past, but a living presence in the moral decisions we make. Do we burn in rage, or do we burn to cleanse? Do we wield fire to hurt or to heal? Mahuika's mythology challenges us to see the divine not in what fire destroys, but in what it reveals. Even today, some East African spiritual communities light ritual fires to Mahuika at the start of legal councils, community gatherings, or seasonal changes. These flames are kept alive for days, watched closely, cared for like sacred children. They serve as constant reminders that truth, once ignited, cannot be extinguished, that justice, once called, cannot be denied. Mahuika's name means more than just fire. It means presence, it means clarity, it means vengeance when all else fails, and protection when no one else remains. In the circle of their flame, all stand equal. Warriors, elders, rulers, the innocent and the guilty alike. All face the same question. When the fire speaks, will you withstand its truth? Because Mahuika does not merely burn, Mahuika remembers. And in every flame that lights a path, every torch that leads a people, and every fire that guards the night, their spirit remains, watchful, righteous, unyielding. In the stories of Shango, Apedemak, and Mahuika, we do not find reckless violence or unrestrained wrath. We find order, we find meaning, we find the sacred. These warrior gods, drawn from across the vast tapestry of African traditions, each wielded power not for themselves, but for a greater moral imperative. They were not avatars of chaos, but enforcers of justice, cosmic judges with swords, thunder, and fire. To Shango, justice came in bursts of lightning and cracks of thunder. His anger was not random, it was deliberate, a force aimed at those who broke the sacred trust of community. His reign, both as man and god, set a standard. Leaders must be fierce but also fair, powerful but also bound to truth. When he roared from the skies, it wasn't just weather, it was a verdict. His presence was not symbolic, it was living law, echoing in every storm, reminding mortals that accountability is eternal. Apedemak, the lion of Nubia, brought kingship into divine alignment. He was not just a patron of war, but a guardian of statehood, culture, and legitimacy. His face, carved in stone and sanctified in ritual, declared to all who ruled, "Your power is not yours alone. It is borrowed from the divine. It must serve the people, uphold the law, and protect the sacred balance." To rule without justice was to invite his wrath, and his wrath was final. Apedemak was not summoned lightly. His roar echoed through royal palaces, temples, and war councils alike. Mahuika, the fire that speaks truth, taught that vengeance is not always destruction. It can be purification. Fire reveals what is hidden. It burns away what no longer serves, and it leaves behind a fertile ground. Their flame protected the innocent, revealed the deceitful, and demanded that every action have moral weight. In Mahuika's heat, there was wisdom, and in their silence, judgment. A whisper in the fire could mean salvation. A flare could mean condemnation. Mahuika was never absent, only watching. What links these gods is not geography, not language, not even specific rituals. It is the shared African understanding that power must be sacred, that war, while brutal, can be righteous, that justice, when wielded with divine intent, becomes more than human law. It becomes cosmic harmony. In their mythologies, divine violence is not celebrated for its own sake. It is celebrated when it restores, protects, and realigns the world with truth. These gods did not operate alone. They were woven into the very societies that worshiped them. Their symbols adorned thrones, drums, weapons, temples, and homes. Their names were spoken in fear and reverence. They were gods of the battlefield, yes, but also of the courtroom, the altar, and the village square. They reminded rulers of their duties, protected the oppressed, and punished the corrupt. In a world often marked by uncertainty, they offered clarity. That might must be tethered to morality, and that the divine does not forget. The legacy of these deities still burns today, in the rituals of diaspora communities, in the oral traditions passed down from grandmother to grandchild, in the hidden meanings behind dances, chants, and ceremonies. Their power lives in stories, in symbols, in the fire lit at the center of community gatherings. Even as nations rise and fall, these warrior spirits endure, not as relics of the past, but as living blueprints of justice, honor, and sacred responsibility. To study them is to look inward. What kind of justice do we believe in? When we wield our own power, whether as leaders, creators, or citizens, do we serve truth or ego? These gods challenge us not to seek vengeance without purpose, but to remember that justice is always sacred work, that to protect, to restore, to defend can be holy. Their stories are not myths to be forgotten, but mirrors to be studied. They tell us that justice is not always soft. Sometimes it roars like a lion. Sometimes it flashes like lightning. Sometimes it burns, but always it speaks the truth. And in that truth, we find something immortal. So if these gods stir something in you, if their stories moved you, taught you, or lit a fire within you, don't let that flame go out. Share it, carry it. Let it shape how you live and what you stand for. And if their thunder ever rolls again, May it find you on the right side of justice. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments which warrior god spoke to you the most and why. Because this isn't just mythology, this is memory, this is legacy, this is power that still speaks.